Hi guys, welcome to another exciting episode of Where's My Masculinity. In today's episode, I am with Mervin, who runs the Holding Space project, which basically has vulnerability circles for men. Welcome to the show. I'd like to start with maybe asking you what would be seemingly an obvious question. What is vulnerability?
What is vulnerability? So, for me, I think for me, what I understand vulnerability to be, or what it looks like for me, is speaking authentically, my truth, owning the way I feel, being naked, being stripped naked, and without my ego, without all the bullshit, and basically just showing up in every part of myself that's just beautiful, like the yin and yang kind of thing, my gold and my shadow. So that's what vulnerability looks like for me. Yeah.
You mentioned very interesting stuff about ego and that, which is I think typical sometimes of men. So before I get into that further, I'm very interested in your own personal journey to get to the point of why vulnerability is important to you in your own journey, and why you feel it's important for us as men to engage and be vulnerable.
Okay, first of all, and thanks for the question. So first of all, I think for me, I come from a background of addiction. So I'm in recovery myself. I've been sober for 18 years, and thank you. And I think throughout that journey, that recovery journey, what I found for myself was, when I saw what was happening in these rehabilitation centers, was vulnerability. I mean, we do group therapy, we talk about how we're feeling, with and understanding our feelings, because I think for me, once I put the drugs down, I started feeling, because I used to numb, I used to suppress, and I used because I didn't want to be in my skin. I was uncomfortable in being in my body, and obviously the drugs and the alcohol for me kind of just numbed me. And now in recovery, now I started feeling and being open and raw, because now I've got this hole, right? And what the drugs did for me is like it kind of filled that hole in the soul. Yeah, it filled that hole, and now I didn't have that part of myself that was there for a long time. This, my best friend, my lover, my confidant, my everything, and it was sad losing that part. Well, giving it up. I mean, I had to surrender to the fact that I am an alcoholic. I had to surrender that I'm an addict, and to feel my feelings, and for me that was huge. Coming from a background where feelings weren't much of the topic of the day, and I had to kind of just figure it out on my own. But I knew I felt a lot, even from childhood. I knew I felt a lot, but I felt like my environment didn't support my feelings, and so I had to just carry on with it. Just go on with it. And obviously my parents were just doing the best they could with what they had. I don't know if I'm answering your question.
No.
What is the question again?
No, I mean, you're sharing your
What's
journey,
the question again?
The journey about how you got to vulnerability.
Yes.
And then secondly,
yes.
As
yes.
in light of your
journey,
why it's important.
Yes. Okay. Yes.
Yes. So you are.
Yes. So also a big part of that was, okay, so then it was the rehab thing, and it was therapy.
Yeah.
And which was kind of very new to me. I mean, I think at the age of 15, 16, I went to my first rehab, and I'm from El Dorado Park, so I then had to go to a rehab. I went to a rehab in Houghton back in the day, and it was a big culture shock for me, and the way this whole thing worked and what it looked like, and people just talking about their feelings. It was like, okay, this is weird. but I got into that system, right? And I started opening up. I started talking about, the stuff that bothered me, my pain, my struggles. Because I think, like, for me, I used because I wanted to belong. I wanted to fit in.
Right.
I used because I wanted to hide. I didn't like who I was. I always wanted to be someone else.
Right.
I wish I was someone else. That's the way I felt at that time. And then I found, and then in 2006, my mentor, my sponsor at the time was like, listen, there's this program, there's this weekend that I went on, and I'd like you to do it. I can't tell you much about it, but I'd like you to go on it.
Right.
And then I went on this weekend and with men. It's called the Mankind Project. And wow, I mean, I remember there was a certain part of the weekend where there was a lot of vulnerability and emotion expressed on the weekend by men. And I remember it was my time to be processed. And I was panicking because everyone was crying, right? A lot of the men that I saw were crying, and I was like, oh shit, it's my turn. What am I gonna do?
Right.
And unfortunately, I didn't cry, and I was quite hard on myself at the time. Like I should cry, But then, much later in my life, I got in touch with a lot of emotions, and also what brings up a lot of emotion for me is, like things like I lost my brother to suicide, and so when I think of him, I'll listen to a song that he likes, and that will kind of be a bit of a tear jerker, and I'll cry, and that's okay. You know what I mean? Because I've also learned that it's okay to feel what I'm feeling without judging it, and without feeling shame of any sort for getting in touch with my emotions, and I'm really comfortable around that, because that's where the healing for me starts. Is that cleansing my soul, and just feeling whatever I need to feel. So yeah, that's kind of the journey I've been on, and then also what I decided was, and even with the Holding Space project was, I approached an artist, a visual artist, Justice, who's a brilliant artist, and his work spoke about toxic masculinity, and I was like, okay, so this is what I want to, like, how do I get this more in the public eye? How does it become more of it? Because a lot of this work, also working in psychiatric hospitals, I then worked in addiction as well. I worked in a rehab for 8 years. I worked in another psychiatric hospital for another 8 years. And that's kind of been my life, right? Running group therapy, doing one-on-one counseling, doing coaching. So obviously my work and that stuff encourages vulnerability. And also there's a few men in that spaces. There's not a lot of men who look like me in those psychiatric spaces,
right.
That are practitioners and all of that stuff. So, and then I kind of decided, well, this is what because for me it was always been, it's weird, this expression of, I'd get happy when I would see a client cry or get in touch with their emotions and feel whatever they need to feel, and people I'd probably be like, if I had to describe my day to you at work, and it'd be like, oh, a patient cried, and you'd be like, what? And exactly, so, and me, being a kind of a part of that, and being able, and then for them to be safe around me and to just feel, and for them to get in touch with their vulnerability, for me that's the gift, right? And that's my gift, and I'm good at this shit. I love it. I love transformational work. Yeah. I always, I used to say that when other people get well, I get well, and people getting in touch with their emotions and feeling whatever we need to feel without numbing it, because that's what I did. I numbed it, you know. Whether it be with sex, whether it be with shopping, whether it be with, you know, any sort of acting out behavior, something that, like, looking for something outside of myself to make me feel better, right? And then, I mean, that's how the holding space came about, and it's been running since September last year, and it's been beautiful. It's been beautiful that it's in the public eye. Myself and another facilitator run it called Kevin, and Justice is the face of it. And I mean, a lot of magical stuff happens in that space. It's confidential, so whatever happens there stays there. It's that safety, and men trust us, which is beautiful, and trust us with their hearts, you know. And men bring whatever they need to bring, you know, without the wallets, without the car you drive, without the trimmings, just you know. Just come as you are, in your whateverness, you know.
So you mentioned quite a few key points. So before I get into the mechanics of how the space actually runs, you mentioned a very important word, which was safety, right? From the work that you've done in, you know, the psychiatric space and all of that kind of stuff, why do you think men feel there are a lack of safe spaces for them to be who they are, right? Because I think on the flip side, what we find, and you mentioned it in your own journey, you know, trying to be something that you're not, because maybe there's a mold or a construct of what you expected to be as a man, and when you feel like you don't fit that, there's no outlet for you to be like, hey, this is who I am, I don't subscribe to this script. And the minute you maybe are brave enough to do that, it's like, dog, you're just a simp, man, you're just whatever. So why do you think it is that we have that absence of safe spaces for men to just be who they are?
It's interesting. It's an interesting question. Why don't we have those safe spaces? I mean, I think for me, the way I understand it is, you know, it's you know, for thousands and thousands of years, we had to be warriors, we had to be providers, you know, we had to be tough, and, you know, all these sayings of, you know, and forgive me for what I'm about to say, is don't be gay, or if you express emotion, you know, and especially, you're weak. And I mean, especially for me, you know, growing up in a colored township, that was considered weak. I had to be tough. I can't cry at a funeral. I shouldn't, which is my God-given right to bloody cry at a funeral, because it's sad.
Yeah.
I should cry.
It's a place of mourning.
Of course.
Why wouldn't you?
Exactly. But obviously what was modeled to me was the complete opposite of that. And I mean, I think, you know, these things are modeled to you, or to me, by my parents. You know, it's modeled to me by people around me, and the people around me didn't show me that. And you know, it was kind of looked at, women do that stuff, not men. You know, I mean, kind of just, you know, a bit off the topic. I mean, I grew up in a home with a gay brother, and the environment didn't support that, you know, and it was judged, and it was called all sorts of names. And I suppose it's also like, you know, that Christian kind of construct of, you know, and that environment didn't support him. So, and again, back to my point of, you know, emotion that's kind of drummed into us, but also for me, breaking away from that world was very liberating, and also just being held and supported and nurtured for me to feel safe. And yeah, I mean, I think that's the point of the holding space, is trying to break those generational curses and rewrite the script, right? And that we don't have to perpetuate, or then idea, that we don't have to perpetuate that stuff, and and it's okay to be gay, and it's okay to feel, and it's okay to cry. For me, when friends cry these days, I'm like, beautiful, beautiful. It's good. Like I welcome it. Because that's all part of the healing. It shouldn't be terrible and being shamed for feeling.
You're not a robot.
Yeah. Because I mean, that was the story. It's like we were shamed. People would shame us for expressing these emotions. I mean, where do they go? Then they just bottle up inside of us, and then they come out sideways in an unhealthy way, right? And then it comes out in an unhealthy anger, in abuse, with vulgar language, abuse of verbally abusing people, because for me it's like I always wonder, what happens to suppressed anger all the time? Just shut up all the time. And one day, what will happen is it's going to come outside of us, and it's going to come out in a bad way, So part of also breaking the chains is us sitting down and having real, authentic conversations, where you don't see what I wear, or or what iPhone you have, but I see your heart and you see my heart, and us being intimate. For me, someone described intimacy like that. For me, is me being able to see your heart and you being able to see my heart, and that's intimacy. That's real intimacy. So yeah.
Tell me about when you first started the holding space, and as you've carried on in the journey, the response you've gotten from men in terms of people that come and attend.
I love it.
So obviously it speaks to the fact that we need more spaces like this. And I know you said the sessions are confidential. And so I'm very keen for you, because you have a sense of insight into what's troubling men that perhaps most people don't. So my question to you would be, if you were to articulate what breaks your heart the most about what men are carrying, or what things men are carrying inside of them, in broad terms, what would some of those things be?
Sure. I mean, there's a lot of trauma, so much trauma. It varies. It's trauma. It's childhood stuff. I mean, for me, growing up in an abusive home, where I was always scared as a little boy. Very scared, and I didn't know what the day would bring. My mom was angry, and she'd lash out and shout, and that would make me anxious. It would make me feel unsafe in the home. And I mean, I suppose I can only talk for me, but a sense of not feeling like I'm enough, not feeling good enough. I struggled in school, and that was part of the story, was that I struggled in school, and for a long time I felt like I'm not good enough, because it almost felt like all the kids in the class were getting what was happening at the time, and it just kind of went over my head. It just didn't make sense. But then I was also told, I'm stupid. And honestly, that messaging, stayed, it carried it. It started as from a little boy, and kind of moved down to my adulthood. And I therapist called it reparenting. reparent, how like I need to learn to reparent
Yes.
myself.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the reality is that my parents were not going to be able to fix it. They can tell me I love them to make me fix it. But it's not about them. I need to reparent that little boy. Make sure that he feels safe, he feels loved, he feels nurtured, that he knows that he is enough. And it wasn't his fault that he was misunderstood by the boy. And we're not going to be gentle with him, and kind to him, you know what I mean? And obviously, I mean, that gets triggered in this world. I mean, I worked in a psychiatric hospital. I was the only guy that was on the degree. Instead of peak. But what I brought the street knowledge, I brought the fact of being in there. I brought that. I brought, I mean, I'm married. I brought that. I brought that, that magician kind of. I mean, I'm the kind of guy I always say, like, I can fit in Santa, I can fit in Alex, I can kind of maneuver. And that's become a secret power of mine. But also, and again, why I'm giving you that example of similar people with degrees is from time to time that part of me will come up. These people are better than me. They're going to see I'm stupid. And my head will
do all these loops.
Yes. My head will like talk shit in my ear, and basically tell me that I'm not enough. And again, it's about like how I contain that putting that safe that it's not. And he's not stupid. And there's nothing wrong with him, and he's amazing the way he is. And I think that's what I wanted as a little boy. It's just to feel safe, to make a lot of sense, be proud, and be that there's nothing wrong with
Yeah. No, I mean, Mervin, I think. Well, thank you for sharing your journey. Thank you for creating a safe space for other men to know who they are. I think that men have many avenues that we can do that with, and I'm quite sure as we head to the screening and stuff, the audience will definitely engage and want to know a lot more about your work. So for those of you guys that want to follow his work, it's called the Open Spaces Project. Follow them on Instagram and please support the work and join us for our screening, which is happening in a week's time. We will unpack a lot more. And thank you for your heart. Thank you for loving us as your brothers and creating the space for us to be who we are.
Exactly, and that's why I do this work, because I felt I didn't belong. I felt like I felt like, and that's why I do this, because to be a part of, to be a part of a movement, to be a part of a brotherhood that supports and loves and cares for each other. That's why. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Awesome.